Greetings and welcome to View from Above Tarot. This is Kag at the Treehouse, and the purpose of this video is to just talk a little bit about the various tarot decks that I have and that I use. What you see before you is the Radiant Wise deck, which is one that I use probably most often. The Centennial deck, which is my newer deck and which I also have used in these videos. These are both Pamela Smith Coleman drawings. They are the Rider-Waite Smith deck. A little bit different, and I'll talk about that. This third deck is the Gilded Tarot, which was drawn by Cyril Marchetti. It is based on the Rider-Waite Smith deck, but it has its own images. So I want to talk a little bit about the differences between these decks. As I said, these two are the original Rider-Waite Smith decks. They are smaller decks. You can see this one's pretty small, and this one's a little bit bigger. This is a size that most of the tarot decks are these bigger sizes. They don't fit well in my hands, and so I have really opted for the two decks that are playing card side, because I can shuffle those in a way that I find satisfying. So I've kind of laid them out so you can see the differences from one card to the next. And you'll notice right away that the Radiant Wise has a darker tone to it and does not have that frame. The coloring is just a little different from the Centennial to the Radiant Wise deck. Just a little darker cards, a little subtler perhaps. There are some color changes from this deck to that deck. The Centennial is supposedly accurate to the original coloring that Pamela Coleman Smith did when she created these cards. And the Radiant Wise is a later version that was done, I think, in 2009. Los Scarabo is a producer of tarot cards, and they did a darker version. And I do like this. It's a little easier on the eyes. One of the things I want to point out is when you go from a framed card to an unframed card, you can see that in the framed version, the left side of this third or this first sunflower, and it's cut off here. You can't really see it in that card. And that is maybe the downside of the Radiant Wise frameless cards, is that sometimes the image gets a little bit cut off in order to make it fit in the card. The other thing that I notice is the difference between the mountains in these two versions. This looks like the mountains are green in the distance. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, they're blue in the distance and they're green in this card. In many of the other cards, the mountains will be blue in the Centennial deck, but they'll be brown in the Radiant Wise in this deck. This deck is, like I said, the Cyril Marchetti Gilded Tarot. And while the cards are the same, I'll just point out the difference here. We've got sunflowers in both of these decks, and there are no sunflowers, although there's an image that sort of made the sun look like a sunflower in that deck. So imagery in the tarot cards is important for you to understand the symbology behind what that card is supposed to mean. And as you get to know a particular deck, you'll be really well versed in the pictures, and you can see how different the grieving man is from the Radiant Wise deck to the Gilded Tarot. They're very different. The 3 cups certainly are turned over, and there are 2 cups standing, so that imagery is still there. But look, you can see the addition of the ravens. There is no bridge in this one, so some subtle differences. Again, it is just a personal preference. So this deck I have been using for about 2 months. This deck I have been using for 16 months, and I've had this deck for 1.5 years. What I have discovered in these last 2 months is that the Radiant Wise deck speaks to me in a gentler way than the Centennial deck does. I don't know how to describe it in any other way, but while the messages will remain the same, the cards that communicate are just a little gentler for my perception from this deck than they are with this one. Now, some part of that may be because I've been using this deck for a longer time than this deck. But I do find that while the messages are similar, this was just presented with a little more finesse, if you will. So I've been reading tarot, like I said, for about 15 months now. Originally, my first tarot deck came in 1976 when tarot was still starting a resurgence back then. I found a deck in one of the bookstores after I graduated from college, and I played with it for a while. But I have to admit, I didn't really know what I was doing. There weren't a lot of resources to learn about tarot reading at the time, and I scared myself because there are some pretty scary cards in the tarot. Let's be frank about that. And so I put them away and actually forgot that I had even done that until a birthday a year and a half ago, and my sister offered to do a tarot reading for me, and I took her up on it. And at the end, it was so cool. And at the end, I said to her, "Where did you learn to read tarot?" And she laughed and she said, "Well, don't you remember? You showed me how to read tarot when I was 12 years old." And I'm like, wow, I had forgotten all about that. So since that time, I have learned a lot about psychology and a lot about spiritual direction. And so my goal as I use these decks is to try to marry all of those three interests together. I really care about our spiritual development, our psychological development, and I think that the tarot is very helpful in doing that. So that's a long way around to say, if you are thinking about buying a tarot deck, look out there. There are a myriad of them, all kinds of them. I think one of the funniest ones is the Wicked Witch Tarot. There are tarot decks that are built on the Wizard of Oz, on the Lord of the Rings. I mean, you name it, it's probably out there. But consider looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, because that is really on which most of the decks that are available out there are based. So I encourage you on your tarot journey, or at least understanding what it is that you're looking at. And I hope that you find some satisfaction in whatever you decide to do with reading tarot cards. So that's the view from above on my Let Me Explain About Tarot Cards video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will welcome you back to the treehouse next time when we take another view from above. Blessings.